Grab Life by the Goals is the podcast for passionate badasses to get inspired, activate their potential, and crush their goals. In a nutshell, we do big shit around here. Whether you're looking to disrupt your career, start or grow a business, or simply have a more kick-ass life, you're in the right place. Come to be inspired, find your swagger, dream bigger, and take actual steps to level up your life. All with a side of real talk and raunchy humor. I'm your host, Lauren Widrick. I'm a life and business coach, and I'm right here on the roller coaster with you. Are you ready? Let's do this. What's up, badass? Welcome back to another episode of the Grab Life by the Goals podcast. Today, I'm spilling the tea on the Grab Life by the Goals Summit. I'm going to take you behind the curtain. I'm going to tell you everything about how the event went, the good, the bad, the ugly, the orgasmic, the incredible, because it was all of those things. So I know there are some of you listening who are interested in hosting conferences and events and retreats. So this will actually be useful for you to hear some of the behind the scenes of putting on an event like this. And then I know some of you have the FOMO because you wanted to be there and couldn't. So this is going to give you a feel of what it's like to attend a Grab Life by the Goals crazy fun event. Now, this episode is totally unscripted. I'm going to speak to you like I have been for my friends. Now, this episode is totally unscripted. Over the last month, a bunch of my friends have just been like, holy shit, Lauren, we saw Instagram. How was the event? And I just told it to them straight. So that's what I'm going to do for you here today. Straight talk, no filter, because, oh my God, there's just so much to tell you. But first things first, why did I decide to host another big ass conference? And I say another because if you're a new listener here, you may not know that I hosted the Grab Life by the Goals annual summit for the first time last year. So the first weekend of January 2023 is when I did my first big conference. And I had done smaller baby conferences before that. This was my first big one in a hotel ballroom, and it was life-changing, not just for the people in the room, which is exactly what they reported. So many of them, corporate executives and personal development junkies like me, who love to go to summits, came up to me and were like, this is the best one I've ever been to. And so at the end of that one, I looked at my team and I was like, as psychotic as this sounds, when the fuck are we doing this again? So I pretty much immediately booked the Marriott, the same room, same venue for the following year. Now, why have the conference the first weekend of January? Because that has proven both years to actually be a really tough weekend. In all reality, I have struggled with, I think, a portion of ticket sales because of two reasons. One, it is the dead of winter. Kids are still in winter break. We have just had Christmas. People are not in the mode to go away for 2 days. And then the financial element as well. Like literally, we just had the holidays. People have spent a lot of money. And I'm over here like $897 for 2 days. Come get it. So it worked out perfectly, though. I think the universe makes no mistakes, because here is the deal. The reason I picked this weekend, the first weekend of January, is for the 3 years prior to hosting my own, Sean and I used to get on a plane and go to either Vegas or Dallas, depending on where it was that year, and go to a goal-setting retreat the first weekend of the year. And it has been life-changing for us. And it was at one of those conferences that was a good conference. I mean, a little bit boring in my opinion, that I sat there and said, this concept is excellent. This is the way to start the year. I'm going to do this shit and make it freakier and funner. And that's exactly what we did. So my philosophy has been over the last couple of years, yeah, it's inconvenience. But the people who will take that inconvenience to come to a 2-day summit, maybe fly, maybe get hotel, maybe get childcare, are the types of people that will move mountains for their goals. And that's the type of people I roll with. So that has been my philosophy the last couple of years. Is it's a little bit of a weed out weekend. It's not for everybody. And that said, I am considering changing it to another date. It has been suggested to me that even if it were a week later, like the second weekend in January, it would be infinitely easier for people. And it might even be for me. Like my kids were out of school the first week of January. So like the final week leading up to the summit, my freaking kids were home. So I kind of get that. Still home on winter break. This is the duality. This is the interesting part about how I approach business. I can feel very firmly about something, but I can also be open to other messages that the universe is giving me. So I have not booked the Marriott for 2025 for the first weekend in January for two reasons. One, I am going to spend this year kind of doing a little market research because it's also been suggested to me that maybe we should get out of town and go to Mexico or go to the Caribbean and do this shit at a resort, which is really turning me on. That's a whole other vibe. I am going to explore doing it maybe a tad later in January next year, just to see how that affects not only ticket sales, but my ability to plan this well. So I want to take a moment and tell you about the months and weeks leading up to the event before I tell you what it was like in the room. Planning this event was so exciting, y'all. I mean, it went so well last year. I was like, let's just go bigger. Let's make this thing 3x, is what I kept telling myself. So 3x the attendees, 3x the quality, and 3x the experience. So I was going for, my target was 300 attendees to this event. And I knew that was a stretch goal. I mean, going from 100 to 300 is a big leap, especially in 2023. So I learned this only after the fact, but I'll share it with you now. Studies and statistics showed that conference sales were down 50% across the industry in 2023. It could be the economy, it could be the job market uncertainty. I don't know what it was. It probably said in the article, but that kind of made me feel better because selling tickets was not as easy as I thought it would be, even though I had a bomb ass marketing strategy. So as I began to plan the event, I was like, how do we 3x all of it? So I started with the speakers. The speakers the prior year were incredible. And I made a commitment to myself to bring in pretty much all new speakers. This was for the benefit of my squad, who gets a free ticket to this event, and repeat attendees. I wanted to make sure that even though the structure of the summit was similar enough, the bones were still the same, the content was totally fresh, totally different, totally new inspiration. So if you came to this thing twice, you're having two very fresh experiences. So the way I approached speakers was actually to start with the flow of the conference. This is not just a random buffet. I have been to so many conferences, even a few right before the one that I hosted, where I would literally call it a random ADHD buffet of random speakers. Like you're going from room to room to room to room and breakout. And like everybody is having a different experience of the conference and it's not cohesive. Like it was, these conferences were interesting, but I didn't leave with a plan and they didn't take me on a journey. So these conferences are great for different scenarios, but mine is a goal setting conference. And this is the flow of the 2 days. The morning of day one is about clarity. What the fuck do you really want? The afternoon of day one is crushing your cock blocker. So, okay, now that you know what you want, what gets in the way? Self-sabotage, lack of support, etc. The morning of day two is crafting your goals for 2024. And we use parts of my methodology for that. And then the final chunk, the afternoon of day two, is cultivate your community, which we philosophize about, but then we actually do in the room. So you can see that this flow is like, what do you want? What's in the way? What are you going to do about it? And who's going to help you? This mirrors exactly the Grab Life by the Goals methodology, which I have meticulously crafted over the last year or so, my 12-step system, which you can buy in my course. These 12 steps are actually bucketed into those 4 categories that I just described. And so I should pause and talk about that for a second, because at the 2024 summit, we talked about the glow up. It's so funny. Like, success leaves clues when you look in hindsight. There's an image of me from the 2023 summit standing on stage in front of a slide that says the Grab Life by the Goals manifesto. And it's just a weird bullet list of things I believe. And 1 short year later, this thing has been synthesized into a 12-step method that I run in the squad, that I run at my summits, that I have in my course, that is the method followed in my Grab Life by the Goals journal online. It's crazy what can come forth in just a year. And it's so cool to be able to compare and contrast the summit from this year and last year and all of the things that glowed up. So anyway, that's the flow of the summit. Every speaker was carefully slotted into one of those sections. So for instance, Jen Drummond, our world record holding mountaineer, the one who's climbed mountains on 7 summits, 7 continents, has 7 kids, and did all of this after a near-death experience. She was our opening keynote, because how the hell did she decide to do that? How did you get that clarity? She was in the clarity section. Also, speaking of glowing up, I cannot believe that we got her in the room. She's absolutely incredible. She flew into Charlotte to do our summit and then flew directly to New York City for her book launch and to be on Good Morning America. So I woke up like in a haze Monday morning and saw Jen Drummond on Good Morning America. I was like, oh my God, we were just partying with her 2 days ago. It's so wild. But anyways, you get my point. So we carefully slotted the speakers in the Crush Your Cock Blocker section. We had Montel and Emily Breeze Watson come speak, and they have multiple businesses, big careers, huge online followings, 4 kids. And their talk was called Balancing Business, Babies, and Bliss. And the question for them was, how? Like, how do you do all that? Because so many of us self-sabotage, we have shitty self-talk, we have excuses, and they have somehow busted through them to create this really rich, busy, robust life. In that same section, we had Blair and Aaron Primus, whose talk was called Success in the Second Act. And it was like not a dry eye in the room because each of them had been through some stuff. And if you listen to a prior episode of this podcast, they tell you about it. So Blair's marriage ended very unexpectedly. Aaron lost a child to a rare pediatric cancer. And yet somehow they found the strength and the grace and the perseverance to get through that, find each other, and craft a totally new chapter of their lives together. So I have to tell you about an angel that showed up for me, as so many did with this conference, Lauren Ansley, who was actually our opening keynote speaker. She did a talk right before Jen Drummond called The Funny Thing About Perseverance, and it was like the best. It was the best way. She's a trained stand-up comedian. She teaches public speaking and just is so funny and engaging and got people in it in the first few minutes. She introduced me to someone named Craig Collin, who is a stand-up comedian, motivational speaker, and has also beaten cancer 6 times, like 6 different forms of cancer. The reason this is all a situation of angels is the one repeat speaker I was going to bring back, Don Garrett, my comedy trainer. I was going to have him open the room Sunday morning with a stand-up comedy set like he did last year. He was the only person coming back. He had to drop out last minute due to a death in the family. And so the Thursday before the summit, I emailed Lauren Ansley, who does stand-up comedy training. I said, is there anybody in your world who does stand-up comedy that's like kind of sort of motivational, who would be willing and able to deliver this in like 36 hours? And she wrote me back within 5 minutes and said, it's Craig Collin. So that is who opened the room on Sunday morning, doing a talk called From Chemo to Comedy, Overcoming Life's Toughest Challenges, or maybe laughing our way through life's toughest challenges. I'm butchering the tagline a little bit, but oh my God, like, what a way to open the room. I love stand-up comedy, but this one had a ton of meaning behind it. Like, again, perseverance, goals, mindset, and being able to laugh at things you're not allowed to laugh at. That's what I appreciate about his talk is we were like, are we allowed to laugh at this? But we did, and he gave us permission to be vulnerable, and it was so amazing. After that, we had Dr. Ariel Ellis give an amazing talk about an excellence mindset. So just being excellent in every area of your life, settling for nothing less, and tips and tricks for how to do that. So quite a few people came up to me in the room and were like, where did you find Dr. Ariel Ellis? And I'm like, oh, Jessie Germain, the amazing woman on my team who's our community manager, introduced us. Another angel showed up right as I wanted to, because it is important to me to look at my speaker lineup and make sure it is diverse, not just from a racial perspective, but from an age perspective, from a background perspective, from a lived experience perspective. I wanted to make sure that we had people in corporate, in entrepreneurship, married, not married, young, old, variety of ethnicities, people who are freak flaggy like me, people who are more normal. Although I will say this, one thing that every freaking speaker had in common on that stage is that they were really funny and witty and cool. Not everybody was up there slamming the dick jokes and saying fuck all the time, but everybody brought such a unique perspective and it was absolutely amazing. So I did my goal setting workshop. And I have a unique spin on it because I really believe our goals are a firm intention with room for the universe to play with you. And what's very, very granular is the next 90 days. So I taught people my philosophies for setting kick-ass goals. We did that. It was super fun. And then when we came back after lunch, it was time to start talking about community, the squad, which is like the whole thing. Our speaker right after lunch was Alina Doran, and her talk was called How Not to Be an Asshole. And she dug into the 5 asshole archetypes. This talk was fascinating, especially to my corporate people. But all of us have encountered the 5 asshole archetypes, and turns out all of us are one of the 5 asshole archetypes. It was so fascinating. Then we went into a fireside chat with JJ Littrell, my bitch please bestie, the woman who probably knows me better than almost anyone on earth. We had this incredible fireside chat about how we push and challenge and are there for each other, and our bond is unfuckable with, and the power of having that in your life. At this point, I invited everyone in the room to come into our squad to receive this level of support. And on the spot, on the stage, I came up with this concept of squad math because I have launched a boot camp model into my business, meaning in addition to regular squad activities, every few weeks, I am hosting a rather intense boot camp that people who are not in the squad can sign up for. So for instance, right now I'm running one called Launch That Shit, taking your business idea to cash flow in weeks, not months. We are about halfway through the boot camp. It's fucking amazing. We've got people who are not in the squad that signed up. People who are in the squad get it for free. And I went through this slide that was like, so if you join the squad, you get Launch That Shit for free. Right after that, you get Sales Swagger, a 3-week sales boot camp, $2,400 free. Right after that, you get Spicy Social Media, $1,200 free. Right after that, you get All the Things, which is about having a multifaceted, multi-purpose life and business, free. Right after that, you get, oh, I forget what's after that. Host your first retreat, create your first course. All of these, it ended up being over $10,000 worth of boot camps free in the squad. $4,000 for 6 months. You get all of it, plus all of the benefits of the squad that exists currently. So it felt absolutely amazing to give that pitch, in air quotes, that pitch, because it's just reality. I'm like, oh my God, I've created an offer, like Alex Hormozy would say, that's so good, people would feel stupid saying no. Like you're literally getting like $10,000, $15,000 worth of value and this rich level of support for 6 solid months. So it felt amazing to pitch that. Before I walked off the stage, 2 people had purchased the squad. It was absolutely incredible to be with people that are such badasses who have a gut sensation and they follow it. To me, that's a hallmark of somebody who's going to succeed in the squad, somebody who gets a nudge in their gut and is like, fuck it. Fuck it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to put skin in the game. So walking off that stage with 2 members already enrolled was like the craziest feeling. And then lastly, we had a true pro close out the freaking room, Paige Failing. And her talk is called News You Can Use. And it was the perfect way to end. And she may have had the hardest job of anybody because the closing keynote, like everybody's tired, everybody's ready to go. You are standing between them and getting home to their families on a Sunday night. And she is like just the GOAT. I mean, we were standing up, moving, writing workbooks, interactive, laughing, videos. Like she's hilarious, but also it just tied the whole event in a bow perfectly. We ended with a froze toast from Crowntown Froze, and like, oh my God, it was so good. So that is the flow of the event. If you're wondering what it's like, those are the elements that we went through. And you can see it's a journey, right? You come into this room cold and you're like, do I even know what I want? And why am I not achieving the goals that I always say I'm going to? That's the crush your cock blockers. What the fuck am I going to do? And how am I going to set goals differently this time instead of setting the same old ass goals that I always do and not hitting them? And then for once and for all, how am I going to get radically supported? Who are the 6 types of people I need in my life? Where do I find them? And you're going to create that community. So even if you don't join the squad, you have made 100 new friends in the room at this weekend who can become that support system for you. So another thing that went really well about the summit was the sponsors. We had 7 sponsors show up and they were all so perfectly aligned. And this was a big step up from last year. We had no paid sponsors. It was my first event ever. Everybody was an in-kind sponsor. They were doing me a favor by, providing their presence. This year they were paid. And it was really, really cool to have all of these people there, like Box Babe, who provided all of the swag for the conference, or Crowntown Froze, or Amada Search, or On the Move Charlotte, who's a real estate company. We also had Mood House in the session series. We also had QC Hydrate giving IVs on site. So people could come up and get the Grab Life by the Goals blend, which was this crazy blend of vitamins and minerals. And they were getting IVs while they were watching the summit and just feeling incredible. So that was such a cool perk. And then our last sponsor was O'Crumbs, and they provided maybe the funniest thing for the whole conference. So Liz is the owner of O'Crumbs, and they do artisanal posh tarts around here in Charlotte. And she said, what if we gave everybody a quit dicking around chocolate for the summit? I'm like, what do you mean? A teeny tiny chocolate shaped penis in a box that said, quit dicking around. I'm like, this is fucking genius. So she did it. She came, that was her like sponsor donation, was these gifts. And after lunch on the first day, I think it was, everybody had this place at their seat. And I was on stage and I said, everybody has a little gift at your seat, little white box, open it up. And everybody opened it up and somebody all of a sudden yells, it's a penis. Everybody started laughing. It was a 1.75 inch tiny penis. And it was like, it was the best. So Lauren Ansley, the comedian, comes up to me and like whispers on the stage and says, hey, Lauren, guess what the box says? Made in a facility that processes nuts. And she was like handing me a softball of a joke to make on stage, like tiny penis nuts. I whiffed it. I missed the joke. And so I just stood up and announced to everybody, like the elementary school mom that I am, that has to be hyper aware of peanut allergies. Hello, everybody. I did not properly warn you. Allergy warning. These were made in a facility that processes nuts. And a few people started laughing, but later the VIP dinner, Lauren Ansley was like, you missed the jokes. There are just so many funny moments like that. I want to share another few magical moments, and then I'm going to tell you some of the shit that happened too. Okay. Magical moment. We had a beautiful meditation on the first day delivered by Rachel Walt Hatterberg, and it was just beautiful. And one of our ladies, one of our sponsors, Jessica Shuttleworth at Omada Search, I don't know how it came up. I think we were drinking frosé at the end of day one, and we were like, we have an open spot for a meditation tomorrow. The person that was supposed to do it got COVID last minute. So you can hop in and take her spot. She was nervous and excited. And guess what? At 11 o'clock the following day, she was on stage leading the entire room through a movement-based mindful meditation. And it was beautiful, like a beautiful moment. So just so many incredible things. Like during I think it was the morning break on day two. So I would call it 10:30 a.m. on day two, a crazy fucking dance party broke out. It was Uptown Funk, I think was the song. And all of a sudden, people started getting on stage. I took my jacket off. I was like sweating to death. We were like dancing so hard, like we were at a rave on a Sunday morning. And I did not want to stop. There's videos of me just like crazy jumping up and down. There's like 20 people on stage. The whole room was busted out. Everybody's phones were out. Like just these moments of people dancing and connecting and laughing and crying and hugging. And like, I forgot to mention Gotcha Matcha was there. So Gotcha Matcha is these beautiful, like bougie matchas, but he had a panda head on. So it just added like a whole other vibe of like, there's this guy rolling around in a panda head making these delicious like macadamia nut lavender matchas. So it was magical. I hope you're getting the vibe that people walked away. Again, on the way out, it made it all so worthwhile when people were like, this is the best conference I've ever been to. I got to hear it a second year in a row because it's not about being perfect. And now seems like a good time to segue into some of the behind the scenes shit that maybe not everybody was aware of. Some of it they were, but this summit was not perfect. You're hearing the highlights. Let me tell you about some of the behind the scenes. The 3 weeks leading up to the summit were the hardest 3 weeks of my life. Harder than having a baby, harder than getting fired, harder than anything I've ever been through. Awful, awful. And I think here's why. And this is a little bit of the timing and the planning. In the middle of December, I got so sick. I was laid out for a week, like couldn't even lift my head off the pillow right before Christmas. And so I was incapacitated. By day 5, I think my husband was getting a little frustrated because he was single parenting and Christmas shopping and, getting kids through their last week of school before the holiday break. I felt awful. I mainly recovered, but then we had Christmas for a week, which means I was kind of out of the game again. And the week after that, the week between Christmas and New Year's, my in-laws generously took us all on a ski trip, which meant I was physically gone in West Virginia, literally the week before the conference. So for these 3 weeks, I probably was only able to do 20%, maybe 30% of what I had planned to do and what I felt was required to, frankly, sell the tickets. The logistics were unlocked. The speakers were lined up. My team was doing great. It was the ticket sales. And I had been running ads since October. They were having mixed results, right? I think there was a lot of awareness, but they were not driving people to buy because I frankly don't really know how to make ads. So I made some images and videos that I thought would be cool. I know the ads worked because they hit over 100,000 people. And I had no shortage of like 100, 200 people saying, I wish I could be there. I just can't for various reasons. So I know the awareness was helpful. It did not drive sales. So I got to look at that next time for me and just see what we can tweak and adjust on ads. And that's the great thing about ads is you can actually do that analysis. Me posting to my own audience, they got saturated. They had already decided whether or not they were going. So finally, in the 2 weeks prior, like a little bit from West Virginia, and in that final week, I was able to get in with some community leaders. So people who run like Network Charlotte and Empower Her and a variety of other groups. Charlotte is Creative. And was able to say, here, I've got a discount code. I've got a few tickets I can comp for the leaders of the group. And that actually finally got that big burst of people that I wanted at the end. But listen, when I tell you that I was having panic attacks and breakdowns, when I was in the mountains of West Virginia, I had two legitimate panic attacks, one in the car, one back at the cabin. And I don't know if I've had an actual panic attack maybe like this ever, but it just felt like the whole thing was going to collapse. Felt like I was going to have to cancel the event because we had all these speakers lined up. I'd invested heavily in the AV, the food costs had gone up like 30% from last year. I don't know if the Marriott was like claiming inflation, but like I had invested so much, and without hitting a certain number of ticket sales, it would have not been a good situation. So luckily by the end, we got where we needed to be. I did not get to the 300. I got closer to 120, which again is a 20% increase from last year in a market where conference ticket sales were down 50% across the industry. I'm very proud of that. But when I tell you I was stressed, I was so fucking stressed. And when I got back from West Virginia, I had exactly 3 business days to get everything ready. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday before the summit. Friday, we're up there setting up. So that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I didn't have a panic attack, but I cried on every hour on the hour because I kept saying to my husband, there's so much to do and not physically enough hours. I could stay up until 3 a.m. every day and it would still not all get done. And so I screeched into the conference feeling very worn out and ragged. I had big plans of like taking a whole day to meditate and get massages and rehearse. I didn't get to rehearse my own talks. In fact, I was throwing together my own talks like on Friday, like before, the day before we started. So that is one thing that I am disappointed about is I think the quality of my own presentations was not where I wanted it to be. Now that said, everybody still bombarded me and told me it was absolutely amazing. I just know myself. Like I was looking at my first opening keynote and it was very scattered. Here's why. So I hired this amazing company to set up a 36-foot stage, 2 giant LED screens, a huge upgrade from last year. And they were one of the most amazing companies I've ever worked with. But there was a little bit of a tech issue Saturday morning. And I said, guys, I need to make a change to the slides. Is there any way we can just run the slides on Wi-Fi? Like that way I can make updates at every break if I need to. And they were like, sure, we'll try. But during those 2 hours before the summit, they couldn't get it working. And they couldn't revert it back to what they had been doing in time. So when we kicked off the conference, the slides were like, the screens were messed up. Not terribly messed up, just somewhat messed up. And luckily Sean Daddy was there talking me off the ledge and being like, Lauren, it doesn't matter. People aren't here for the screens. But I was like, yeah, but I paid thousands of dollars for this. And again, it's not the company's fault fully. Like I threw them a loop in the morning. I wish we could have been able to revert back to what we had the night prior, but it's okay, right? It's okay. So my initial speech is a little bit choppy in my opinion. However, some people came up to me at the next break and at lunch and at the VIP dinner for that matter. And were like, Lauren, that was so cool. There was a big tech issue and you just rolled with it. And this one guy was like, I've never seen anything like it. I have been at conferences where people melt down and you were just like, screens aren't perfect. We're going to fix these today, maybe tomorrow. Fuck it. We good. So apparently that's the vibe that I gave off on stage. And I am so happy that that's the message that people got. I might've been freaking out on the inside, but if people see me prioritizing the vibe over perfection, progress over perfection, then that's what I want for them. Also, apparently, unbeknownst to me, there were people trying to sneak into the conference and one of them actually fucking got in. So Jen and Jesse on my team, and I forgot to mention Jen was one of our speakers, Jen Olin LaFontaine, after lunch on day 2 talked about progress over perfection. Great freaking talk. But anyway, Jen was running point on the logistics. She was my run of show person at the event. Apparently there was somebody off the streets of Charlotte who snuck into the Marriott and was able to kind of sneak into our event and get some food. And then they were chased away by security. So that's one. Some other motherfucker got in. Some guy claimed that he had signed up and his name wasn't on the list. And I had instructed Jesse, like I've given each speaker a guest that they can bring. And if they didn't register, just let them in. It's fine. So Jesse was skeptical, but let this guy in. He was shady as a motherfucker. And we suspect him of trying to scope, based on activities, trying to scope a phone and steal it. And so Jen had to chase him out. Sean didn't find out about this until after the fact. Sean's like, I would have beat this guy's ass. So security had to come do detail on our event. Like crazy stuff like this was happening in the background. So for those of you who attended the summit, you were safe the entire time. Trust me, there were people watching out for your safety, but oh my God, like at my lunch break, somebody came up and was like, did you know that we just had to chase somebody out of your event? It was absolutely insane. I'm trying to think if anything else crazy happened. I don't think so. There were little blips and boops like going over schedule here, or, I certainly messed up a lot on stage. I was not rehearsed. I had all these intentions of rehearsing. And then those 3 weeks before kind of fucked me. But maybe this is the theme of this podcast. Maybe it turned out exactly like it was supposed to. Maybe people did not want me up on that stage being perfectly rehearsed. Maybe they wanted to see somebody going for their big, hairy, audacious dream, doing it imperfectly, taking messy action, rolling with the punches, not dicking around. Maybe that is better than them seeing this perfectly produced, error-free conference. And I really do believe that. And everything turned out better than I could have dreamed, honestly, because we got 13 members who joined the squad within 24 hours. And the quality of these humans, they are multi-passionate, action takers, badasses, generous. Like all 13 of these people are dream clients that I could not have dreamed up any better in my mind if I tried. Like when I saw name come through, I was like, oh my God. And so we've all been in the squad together. They've integrated beautifully with our OG squad members. And the squad is just on fire right now because of this infusion of these badasses. And the fact that this is how we started our year. Again, we moved mountains to be at a summit that was wildly inconvenient to be at. It was inconvenient in a way for me to host. It was inconvenient for people to be away from their families for 2 days and get childcare. And we had people flying in from literally all over the country, from California to New York and in between. But that's how we're fucking starting our year. And I just feel like a complete and total badass. Okay, so what are my takeaways from the summit? I think they've been sprinkled throughout, but it's first and foremost, I'm really proud of myself. I didn't have to do this. I did not have to answer this call. It was placed in my heart by the universe. I don't know why, to host these conferences, because trust me, I could have spent this tens of thousands of dollars on many other things in my business, but this was meant to be. And even though it was hard and didn't make sense, I followed the call. I'm really proud of going bigger, because if I had kept my goal the same as last year with this crazy market conditions and conferences being down 50%, I probably would have flopped. It probably would not have been a conference. I might have had to cancel. But because I went so big, I was able to overcome these market challenges and still put on a really successful conference with 20% more people. It's a lesson in resilience. I think the universe made it so hard for me the 3 weeks before the summit, because it's like, bitch, we leveling up here. Like, we're leveling up. Big dogs get bit. Like, mo money, mo problems. And I know that sounds negative, but I actually feel so fucking resilient. I have a different vibe. Maybe some of you are feeling it already. I have a different vibe in 2024, and ain't nothing can fuck with me. I made it through that. I made it through panic attacks, crazy financial fear, almost shutting down the conference. Like I made it through these things, and I can make it through anything. Like if we do this again, nothing is going to bother me. Some logistical takeaways from the conference is I think I'm not going to do the Marriott with this giant food and bev minimum that was like hanging over my head, between the Marriott, the huge AV investment that I made, the DJ, a few other things that are escaping me. My nut was large. I had a lot of expenses to cover, which put me in a place of almost scarcity and need when it came to ticket sales. And I will never do that again. Next time I host one of these, I'm going to pick my own venue, get my own caterer. And that way, if 20 people come or 220 people come, the costs are just variable. And I'm not like out this nut to cover. It's not really good English, but you know what I mean. I want to come from a place of power and abundance and not needing to hit a number. Because here's the thing. I wanted 300. I think 120 was better. I got to talk to almost everybody. People made more intimate connections. It was right size for the room. Try to picture what it would have been like at 300. I don't know if it would have been any better or worse, but I'm choosing to believe the universe lined it up in my favor, as it does for all of us. And the last thing I'll say is it was the hardest, most beautiful. It was almost like childbirth, like painful, terrifying. There were moments at the end when I said, I can't do this anymore. But then the baby was born and I was in love with it. Like I had a natural childbirth with Sloan, so I felt everything. And that's a lot what this was like, being uncomfortable toward the end, going into labor, ouch, ouch, ouch. Like what's happening to me? Is this even going to happen? Like, is this even going to work out? And then when it did, it was just, oh my God, like one of the most incredible experiences of my life. And guess what? I'd fucking do it all again. So this is what it's like to live without regret, to be proud of yourself, even if something isn't perfect, and to just go for it and answer the call that the universe has given you. So that's what I want to leave you with today. There is a calling in your heart. I don't know what it is. It can be big, it can be small. But if you have it and you ignore it, I believe it will poison you from the inside. I really do. If I were still sitting here wondering what it would be like to host one of these events, it would just be eating at me, eating at my soul. But I will never have to wonder. I don't ever have to host one of these ever again. And I can die happy and be like, I fucking did that. I am a badass and I have no regrets. And I am hungry to do it again. So I want to leave you guys with those badass vibes. If you are interested in purchasing the recordings of the summit, they are only $97 and you can watch every single one of my workshops, every single speaker. The videos are just sequenced right in order. So it'll almost be like having your own virtual retreat, and you'll get a PDF copy of the workbook. So you could take 2 days off work, do this summit, or you could just listen to them like a podcast. So the link to buy the videos is in the show notes. But oh my gosh, I would recommend just tucking in, because these speakers and my workshops, I claimed they were wiggly. They were pretty fucking good. The workbook's really good too. So go ahead, check out the show notes for the link to buy the summit recordings for $97. And I want to thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Grab Life by the Goals. This felt like catching up with a friend, and I am always here for you, no matter what those goals are, big and small. You got this. And it's time for you to grab life by the goals, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the Grab Life by the Goals podcast. If you loved this episode, I would be thrilled if you subscribed wherever you listen to your podcasts so that you can get notified when an episode drops and we can rendezvous like this every single week. If you're feeling frisky, maybe slap a 5-star review on this bitch and maybe even some comments about what inspired you from this podcast episode. This is simply so more people can find us and join our squad of badassery. I love me some Instagram, so come find me. My handle is @LaurenWidrick, and if you screenshot and share this episode with your peeps, I'll come shower you with all the virtual hugs and kisses. Until next time, grab life by the goals, my friend.